Okay, thank you, Aaron. Let me go ahead and share a PowerPoint here. Okay, so before we get started, if you would like to, you can go ahead and log into your course, because a little bit later on, Lisa's going to be talking about some things that you might want to look at in your course. There's some tools that are in Blackboard to help you with accessibility. So you might just want to have your course pulled up so that you could look at some of your documents. Maybe Lisa's going to talk about an Ally tool in Blackboard and some other things. So you might want to log into your course just so you can see what it looks like in your course, because the things that we're going to be talking about directly correlate to the files that are in your course and how you can help your students be successful in the way that you design and develop your files. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me introduce myself, and then I'll give Lisa an opportunity to introduce herself. My name is Dr. Jaime McLeod, and I have been in the North Carolina Community College system for 15 years. And I've worn many different hats. I've been in technical support. I've been in instructional support, instructional design, and I've taught computer technology classes. And in the fall, I'm going to start teaching communication classes. So I've worn a lot of hats in the community college system, and I love instructional design and student success. And I think file accessibility plays a big part in that, because you're going to help remove any kind of obstacles that your students may face when they're trying to view your learning material and learn. So I'll turn it over to Lisa and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Knight, and I am an instructional designer here and a physics instructor as well. I've been at the college for almost 19 years. I have 25 years of experience teaching. I love working with faculty to help improve their face-to-face web-assisted or online courses. And like Jaime, my focus is on helping you promote student success as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. And so before I get started, I just wanted to say that Lisa and I would be glad to help you with this as you're designing your courses, as you're thinking about using resources. If you want to reach out to one of us and have us take a look at it, or if you have questions beyond this session, we'd be glad to help you make your files accessible and make your course accessible. So please feel free to reach out to us. If you have any questions beyond this and need some help with your course, we'd be glad to help you. So we want to begin by talking about what is accessibility, and specifically what is accessibility in the context of your files and resources in your course. So you can think of accessibility as a way for you to ensure that students of all abilities, all technology backgrounds and different technology hardware that they have and internet connections are able to read, view, and listen to your course material. That's a key component of accessibility, because the more accessibility problems that the files have, the more students will run into issues listening to it, opening it, and then they won't be able to read the resources, which could cause them to have trouble with the assessments, and it can also hinder student learning. So file accessibility plays an extremely important role in student success and student learning, and so it's important for you as an instructor to be aware of these different techniques and tools that you can use to help promote student success in your course. So some of the problems your students might face in these, it could be things like vision problems. So students that need bigger text, larger text, students with color blindness, students that might have hearing impairments, students that might have slow internet connections, low bandwidth, or only a Chromebook, or maybe they're only using mostly a cell phone. So they could have limitations on their devices and any number of different limitations that they could run into. And you want to be aware of this as you're choosing your resources to make sure that you're thinking about this before it happens. Because if students are having the problem and then they can't access it, there's going to be a delay for you to fix it, and there's going to be a delay in the student learning and being able to use your resources. So that's why you want to be proactive with these kinds of problems, so that the students can just seamlessly go through the material and you won't have to worry about them encountering these kinds of problems, which makes your life easier. It reduces the emails you get. It reduces your stress. It reduces your student stress. And so these are just really good practices to incorporate in your course. So we're going to talk about some tools that help you overcome these accessibility problems in your files. Some of these tools, one of the primary ones is the Office Accessibility tool. So your PowerPoints, Excel, Word documents, there's a built-in accessibility checker in Microsoft Word. So as you're creating the Word documents, you can use the accessibility checker right in Word and PowerPoint, and it will help you check the documents. So in some cases, you don't even have to leave and use another program. You can use the features already built into Microsoft Office. And if you're not familiar with that tool, you're going to be more familiar with it after this, and I think it's going to help you a lot. So there's also Blackboard Ally, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, which when you upload documents into Blackboard, you'll get a gauge that shows you how accessible your file is. And so if you can get it to 100%, you can eliminate a lot of common problems that students have with accessibility and files. And also you have YouTube, which will help you with your videos because it provides automatic captioning for your own videos, and other videos you search for that you use on YouTube likely have closed captions. And we're going to talk about how you can identify those files that do have closed captions and then the files that don't. So when you're looking for resources, you want to make sure you're finding resources that are accessible no matter where you're getting them from. Okay, so I think we had a question in chat. Is there a checker in Google Suite? Yeah, we're going to mention one. We're going to mention one for Google. Lisa's going to do that a little bit later on. But if you have another question that's similar to that, but it doesn't cover it, ask us again after we get through that part. It may cover what you're looking for. Okay, so I want to give you a tangible example here, maybe that something you can remember and take away from this. So in case you ever forget about the importance of accessibility, I hope this example is going to stick with you. So in 2015, the NFL had a promotion where both football teams were going to wear the color of their team. So traditionally in sports, the home team will wear a really light color like white, and then the opposing team will wear a bright or a dark color, and it's very two contrasting colors. And that's pretty typical in sports. But the NFL wanted to do something different. And so the Bills and the Jets played each other. And if you're familiar with football, the Jets have a very green color of their uniform, and the Bills have a very bright red component in their uniform. So they played the game, and as the game went on, Twitter began to explode with all these tweets about people saying they couldn't tell the difference between the two teams. So let me show you a photograph from that game. Okay, so here's a photograph from that game through the eyes of someone that has color blindness. So just if you could respond in the chat, if you were watching this and you had color blindness, could you tell, if you're a Jets fan, could you tell who was who in this photo? Yeah, do you see how difficult that is? They look like the same team. So people were saying on Twitter, I don't know who my team is. I can't follow this game. I'm frustrated. And so even companies as large as the NFL can overlook accessibility. And so I want you to remember this example as you're working on your courses. So an example of how you might do this accidentally in your course, you might tell your students that all the terms that are highlighted in red have a specific meaning, and all the terms highlighted in green have another meaning. Well, if a student can't distinguish between the two colors, it could cause them to be confused to understand where the terms fall. So there's other ways you can categorize things and demonstrate things without using color exclusively. And so I want you to think about if there's anything you do in your classes, maybe in your PowerPoints and some of the way you categorize the content in your courses. Think about, are you doing the same thing in those circumstances? And here's another screenshot just to show you how difficult it is to tell the difference between them. This is a view, actually, if you were on the field, what it looked like. And you can still see, even really up close, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between the two colors. Only thing that's helping you in this case is the helmets of the teams. So now let me show you a picture of the game as it was being viewed by people who didn't have color blindness. So can you see how someone that didn't have color blindness would not understand why someone cannot tell the difference between those two teams? Because if they're only viewing it the way they see it, then it's very clear that the teams are green and red, and there's no way you could ever confuse the two. But if you don't realize that there are people with these colorblind issues and they can't tell the difference, then you're not aware that you've created a big problem. And so the NFL learned a good lesson. They have not done this since, but it's just something to get you thinking about. And so the more you become aware of these accessibility issues, the more you're aware of, well, how the student might view this material. And it's going to help you create better, more accessible material when you try to see it through the student's eyes. Okay, so another issue that your students have is that they have very limited bandwidth and internet issues. So some students are on very slow internet connections. Some students are on very old computers. Some students may only have a Chromebook. And for some days, some students may only have a cell phone. So I want you to think about that from the student's perspective. If this is the case, you want to make sure your material isn't too excessively large or isn't taking up too much space, because then it's going to take a lot of time for the students to download it and view it, and it's going to unnecessarily waste their time and frustrate them. Some of the areas you can look at in your course. First, limiting file sizes that you use. One of the most common ways to do this is through photographs. If you take a picture with a camera, or you get a picture that someone else took from a camera and you don't realize how large it is, it could take a student a really long time to download that file. So just because you take a picture and drop it into PowerPoint and then resize it in PowerPoint with the arrows shrinking it down, that is not shrinking the file size of that image. All it is reducing the size, the physical size of the image. It still takes the same amount of time to download that file. So one way you can reduce images, I like to tell people about Pixlr, and I'll just go ahead and type that in chat. You can search for it on Google. It's a website with a free photo editor that you can access from any computer anywhere you are, and it will let you resize an image. Yeah, good. So somebody is familiar with Pixlr. So you may be on somebody else's computer when you're updating your class, and it doesn't have your favorite photo editor, or you don't know how to reduce it. Go to Pixlr and play around with it and see. It's very easy to change the file of an image in Pixlr. It just takes a couple of minutes to learn how to do it. But you'll find it's going to greatly reduce the file size for these images. And it's going to reduce the amount of time students need to download. Your lecture videos are another way to do this. Are you creating 20, 30, 40-minute lecture videos? If that's the case, you're probably making a mistake, because what you need to do is to chunk those videos in more manageable sizes so that the students can download it and watch it over different periods of time. And you're also going to have problems with attention spans going over 7 minutes. So if you need one to be 30 minutes, break it up into 3 videos, and it's going to be a lot easier for students to watch them. It's going to be easier for you to have accurate transcripts and captions for those videos. and it's going to keep their attention a lot better. Use YouTube when you can to link to videos, because YouTube has a built-in player that's a universally compatible player in different browsers and different devices. YouTube spends millions and millions of dollars trying to make sure their player is compatible with everything. So go ahead and use that resource, that research that they've done to make sure that they're compatible with everybody. They're also going to give mostly automatic captions to most videos you're going to use that are generally 80 to 90% accurate. And if they're edited, it can't even be perfect. So YouTube is a great resource to use for bandwidth issues, because it's going to compress the videos. YouTube knows what they're doing. They don't want to waste bandwidth either. So they have really good compression for the videos. So it's a great tool to use to help your students. Think about sharing Google Doc links. So then instead of downloading a big Word file or something, they could click a link and it opens in Google Docs, which could also help your students that only have Chromebooks. Or you could have a Google Doc link and a Word doc together. So if someone has trouble with the Word doc, they click the Google Doc link and then look at it. And also, if you have really large PowerPoint files, consider making them PDFs, because it's just a more accessible form of the PowerPoint. It's going to take less time to download. And so these are just a few tips. By no means is this all of the tips that can help you reduce bandwidth problems and accessibility, but this is a good starting point to get you thinking. Look at your course material. Is any of my course material like this? And we can help you get it more accessible if you reach out to us. So we just want you to be thinking about this, your material, and the accessibility level of that material.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Lisa now.
Thanks, Jaime. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
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 All right, so there are other important aspects of accessibility, and most of these are related to keyboard navigation and the ability of students that need to use keyboard navigation to navigate your documents. And this could be a student that has some kind of neurological problem and cannot use a mouse. Maybe they have some reason they can't use a mouse. Maybe they have a disease or something, or maybe they're older and they're having problems with arthritis in their hand. Or it could be somebody that needs assistive technology, like a screen reader. So these items are really meant to help you structure your documents and your media so that assistive technology and keyboards can navigate them easily, and the students can get the same experience that a sighted or a non-challenged person can get. One of them is really simple. It's just formatting your text documents with headings and bullets, and learning to use your Office products to create, or even your Google products, to create documents that are formatted correctly. Another thing is that when you put tables in for information, you really want to make sure the tables are only displaying text information. You don't want to use a table to display websites or to display or format or organize images. You want a table to be searchable and navigatable, and you want it so that when somebody uses a keyboard, that they will go through the table with the up and down arrows, left and right arrows, in the right order. So you have to format tables a certain way to make sure that they can do that. And for people who are visually challenged, images need to have some kind of alternate description, so that when the screen reader reads it, it will give a description if that image is conveying content. And of course, your videos need to have closed captions or audio podcasts need to have transcripts for those hearing impaired individuals. And finally, hyperlinks is are tricky because a lot of times, if you remember, when you see a hyperlink, it's always underlined, and a lot of people. That's one aspect of hyperlinks, is that it's underlined. That denotes in a text that's a hyperlink. People tend to want to emphasize text by underlining, so that's actually a no-no. You should emphasize text using a bold or italics. If you underline, it could be mistaken as a hyperlink, and that can be frustrating to students. And also, hyperlinks should be linked to a descriptive name of where they are going. So instead of linking to www.ccc.edu, you should link to Central Carolina Community College. Type that in and highlight it, and then add the link to that title or description. We have tools available to us that will help you make sure that your documents adhere to these rules. And Blackboard Ally is one that's built into Blackboard, and the Office Suite accessibility checkers are really probably the two fundamental accessibility checkers you'll be using. We also have Grackle, and I'm going to actually share with you a screen. So that you can see the website for Grackle. So you should be able to see that screen right now. This is Grackle Docs, and it's Grackle. I actually went to the education, that they have a business version too, but it's free, and it's basically a plugin for your Google documents and slides. So it basically acts like it's an accessibility checker, just very similar, and it works very similar to the accessibility checker that I'm going to demonstrate for you in Microsoft Office. The other thing that you want to make sure is that your videos that you're using have closed captions. So here is a course tour that I created for my Physics 152 course, and I uploaded it to YouTube. Note that it's only 5 minutes long, so I'm following Jaime's advice and chunking it up, so it's nice and short. And notice that when I uploaded it, I ensured that I turned on the closed captions. We do have instructions on how to do that on the instructional design website, and we'll share with you that location and where those items are at the end of the session. But look, when I click on closed captions, as the video plays, the closed captions are in sync with the voice. And this hasn't been edited yet. It will be edited before the 16th, but you can easily go in YouTube and edit your closed captions with proper grammar and punctuation and spelling. So the other thing that's really useful that I mentioned before is Blackboard Ally. So when you are asked to go into your own classes, and so if you log into one of your classes, any documents that you find in Blackboard Ally will have a little speedometer, a dashboard. We call it the Ally dashboard. And really, it looks like a little speedometer. And it'll either be green or like a yellow, orange, or red. And for those of you that are colorblind, all you need to do is click on it. And it will tell you actually the percentage. So this actually was, and I would encourage you to click on it, because even though it says it's green, that's been manually set by our institution to pass at a certain rate. And this says that it's 67% accessible. And if you look at it, there's a little I here that tells you that you can click on that tells you all the issues, but it tells you one of the main issues here is that this table is missing headers, which means that, you know, when a screen reader gets to this, it doesn't know where to start on the table, has no idea. A couple other issues with this table as well, and we'll talk about that a little later. But if I want to see all the issues on this document, it says that the PDF contains tables that are missing headers. It does not have a title, so that goes to the formatting of the headers in the text document, and that the PDF contains text with insufficient contrast. So if you actually click on these, you can actually get a definition of what it means, and you can also get instructions on how to fix the table headers in your document. Now, this is a PDF, and most likely this was a PDF made from a Word document that was not accessible. So the trick to PDFs is if you create a Word document and you make sure it is accessible, when you save it as a PDF, the PDF will be accessible. A lot of the PDFs out there may not have been created that way. And so you can, if you have access to Adobe, you can actually go in and tag and make sure that the PDF has headings and titles like it's supposed to, or bullets the way it's supposed to. You can add alt text, you can put the headings and stuff in on tables, and not everybody has Adobe, and we can assist with that if you need that. But a lot of times it's easier in many cases, unless the PDF is just a collection of images. If it has searchable text on it, means you can highlight it, then you can probably convert that PDF to a Word document and then fix it and then save it back as a accessible document. Well, we're going to talk a little more about how you make a accessible document here in a minute. I want to show you, I have one that actually did notice being very accessible, and it actually was at 52%, and it has images that are missing description. So here's the electromagnetic spectrum. There's no alternate text here. So if I want to find out how to, if I fix this, then it's going to just about, completely fix all my problems. My score's going to go up to 100. So that's probably the one I want to fix. And it, once again, tells me what is meant by the description, missing alt text, and then it tells you how to do it. And we'll go over that today as well. And the last thing I'm going to draw your attention to here is I have in your, in the chat box, sorry, I hate to do that to you. In the chat box, I shared a link to a document, and I'm sharing it one more time. I uploaded that document here, hoping that it would, let me just refresh here, hoping that it would score for us to see what it scores as. And it scores in the red. So this is a not accessible document that is kind of a checklist for you guys to actually take away with you. And we're gonna make it accessible today. So it's at 27%. And if I click all the issues in it, it's missing, it's got an image on here that is missing an alt text description. If I fix that, it'll go up to 48%. It does not have headings. So it's not, the text doesn't have a title or heading ones tagged in it at all. So in other words, a screen reader doesn't know where to start. And it also has a table that's missing headings, so it wouldn't know how to navigate the table. So what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to demonstrate to you how to use that accessibility checker. So you've got Ally that kind of gives you a brief kind of evaluation of what's wrong with the document, and it tells you how to fix everything. Or you can use your accessibility checker So everybody should be able to see my Word document here. Hopefully you can. And in order to use the accessibility checker, I'm just going to go to Review. And I'm going to click on Check Accessibility. Now, I want you to notice something, that in the right-hand side here, I get a list of the errors, and then I get a list of warnings. The warnings are icing on the cake, okay? We're really going to be looking at the errors. Now, Ally told us that it was missing alternative text, and it said that the table did not have headers, but it also said that the document didn't have a title or headers. It said the document was missing headers. So what I want you to notice is that this accessibility checker, 90% of the time it does a great job, but sometimes it will miss some of the accessibility requirements. And it could simply be that this was made as a Google Doc and I downloaded it, and for some reason there's some weirdness going on with the background HTML in this document, and it's just the accessibility checker isn't recognizing that these are not formatted. They are not formatted. I know that because if I go over to the home menu, you notice that you have all these little style buttons up here. One is called title, one's called heading 2. If I highlight what should be the title here, I see that the normal button is outlined. So that means that is actually been tagged as normal text. So a screen reader right now doesn't know where the start of the document is. It doesn't know where to start. Or if somebody is trying to navigate it with a keyboard, it's not going to start in the place that you would think it would, which is at the top, on the left-hand side at the top of the document. So the first thing you want to do is, before you start, messing with this and, trying to tag things as headers and titles and, fixing it so that it's formatted right, is you want to come up here to the design section and pick how you want that document to look when it's formatted. So when it does get formatted with titles and headings, maybe I want it to look like this right here. But maybe I like the general way it looks, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to like it. But let me see. I think it's going to look good. So let's just check it out. So I'm going to go over to the home button now, and I'm going to highlight the title, and then I'm going to click title. Okay, so that's what the title looks like with that design. That's the design I picked for this document. It's awfully big. What's nice about the style buttons is that you can right-click on them, you can go modify, and then you can modify that title so that you don't want it to be 28 points. I'm going to make it 22. And press OK. And maybe I like it like that. And also, maybe I think that it needs to be bold-faced. So I'm going to click bold, and so it'll be bold-faced as well. Actually, did they actually save? I don't think it did. It did. All right. So that's the way I like it. It looks really great. I'm real happy with it. So the next thing I need to do is I need to make sure that any headings are appropriately formatted as well. So usually we kind of use a linear progression where you go from a title, and then the next level would be a heading 1, and the next level below that, if you're subdividing into categories below that, would be heading 2. So general rules will be a heading 1. I'm just going to click it as general rules. Oh, I don't know if I really like the line underneath there. The nice thing about it is that if I don't like the line, or I don't like the size of that, it's 18, maybe I want it to always be 16 points, and I want it to be bold-faced, then I say OK. And maybe I like it like that, maybe I don't. You can always go through and modify this design now. Every time you hit heading 1, this is what heading 1 is going to look like. If you don't like that, if you don't like it being numbered like that, and you just don't like the design, it's so easy. You can just go back and change and choose a different design. And once again, when you do that, when you go and you format your design, actually I don't want any lines in here at all. You can always go back and modify the title and the heading to be exactly the way you want it. So you choose a general design that you're happy with, maybe that one, and then you can modify when you are under the home menu, when you're in the title, anything that's a title, actually I just formatted that as a title, anything that's a title, maybe I don't want it to be that big, so I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to modify it to be, 22 instead of 24. I'm going to boldface it. That's the way I want my title to look. So you're going to go through your documents, and that's really how you need to format your documents. You need to choose a design that you're happy with, modify it to look the way you want the titles and the headings to look, using right-click, modify, and then go through and format your headings. So all of these are heading ones. The other thing that I see on this is I have a list of information. This is a checklist. And so, when I learned how to use Word, I formatted everything myself. I would, make the titles bigger. I would boldface them, maybe change the font of them. You don't have to do that now. We're going to use all these buttons up here to help format this. Because what that's going to do is it's going to put, it's going to tag the text so that when a screen reader or a keyboard tries to navigate it, it'll navigate it and read it correctly so that the person using it will get the same experience and get the same, will have the same information conveyed to them that somebody that doesn't need that assistance would get. So I'm just going to highlight these and I'm going to bullet these instead of numbering them myself. And actually I want to make it a checklist because this is actually supposed to be a checklist for you guys to take away with you. So I've got a list of general accessibility items that you want to make sure that your documents follow, and you can use this as a checklist from now on. And I'm going to make a checklist of the items that we mentioned for bandwidth and compatibility. I'm just going to bullet that with a checklist. And then we're going to talk a little bit here about tables. So with tables, the big thing is that we want the screen reader to navigate this in the correct order. So as we do that, I'm going to make this checklist before I go on. We want to make sure that we know where to start in the table. So we have to define the header row and the header column for the table. And so if you highlight the table and you go up to design, you first can choose any kind of design that you want. Just like you do for the paper, choose a table design, whatever you want your table to look like. And then you need to click and check off header row and first column. If you do that, then the screen reader will know exactly where to start. Okay? The other thing I want to mention to you is that we do not want to merge cells and make them one cell because that will mess up the keyboard navigation. If you don't want to have a line here, a border between bread types and cost, you can turn that border off under table properties and just do the outline and just turn that center border off. But you don't ever want to merge cells because that will mess up your the navigation. It won't know what the next cell is to go to using a keyboard arrows or a screen reader. So you want to make sure of that. And then the other thing is, before you move on, go to the layout button. And if this is a really large table that will go another page, it's really important that you click on repeat header rows, so that if it does go to another page, that the header rows are on the other part, or the continuation of the table. And then finally, if you right click on this and you go to table properties, you can enter an alternative description. So that now, if your table has text in it only, and it's been formatted with headers and row columns, you're going to be able to, the person that's going through this table will know what the table says and what kind of information it's conveying. But you do want to put kind of general description for them as well, okay? So you want to make sure that you add a description of what that table is, you know, providing, what kind of information it's conveying. So if this were a data table for bed types, cost, and I forgot what the other one was, calories. And then the last thing I want to show you is how to add an alt text to an image. Like says my dog, he's 5 years old. I have two. This is Bugsy. He's 5. So the deal with images is, if you have an image that is purely there to decorate your PowerPoint, and it's not conveying information, then you really don't have to give it a formal description, okay? But you do have to denote that it's a decorative image so that the screen reader will skip it. When you look at the accessibility checker here, notice that once I formatted my table, the table stuff went away. If I click on image 1 here, I can click on the drop down and I can say add a description. And underneath that, I can mark it as decorative if it's purely decorative, or if it actually is meant to convey information. Like, let's say you have a banner here that, you know, has some kind of information on it, or maybe it's a cartoon that you are using to illustrate some kind of political commentary or something like that. You need to summarize the meaning of that image. And you don't want to say things like, this is an image of, this is a picture of, because a screen reader is going to denote to the person already that it's an image. So you're repeating that. When it reads it out, when it comes across this image, it's going to say image, and then it's going to read the alt text. So if you say, if it says image and this is an image of, it's kind of redundant. So you want to give a simple description of this, and it could be as simple as sad brown dog with sad eyes. That could be the description. But truly, this is decorative, so I'm just going to leave it as decorative. Another way to denote it as decorative is to do 2 quotation marks, and that will denote it as decorative as well. So either one of those is acceptable. And then I think I must have had 2 images here by mistake. Huh. Looks like it. Make that decorative too. The last thing I want to mention are these extra characters. So, you know, when a screen reader reads this document, it's going to read every single space and every single page. So if you have, let's say you have a document where you have a lot of, maybe it's a worksheet and you've left a lot of spaces in between the questions. Every time it gets, you know, it'll read, be mindful of bandwidth, access, limits, file size. It'll read that out, and then it'll say page, 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 page. And the same thing if you had extra spaces, like for maybe you have a worksheet with blanks in it or something, it's going to read, for every space there is, it's going to read that. It's going to say character, 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 character. So if there's 22 characters, it's going to say that word 22 times. So you have to be kind of careful of having a lot of extra spaces and a lot of extra spaces between lines and between letters. And when we're done, we're just going to save it. Hello, it's being weird. And once we save it, we can save it as a PDF as well, and that PDF will be just as accessible as the Word document. So before I go on, do you guys have any questions about that?
So you suggest that if there is a PDF and we've got the sort of red odometer in there, that we should convert it to a Word document, make the corrections, and then save it back as a PDF?
Now, if your so sometimes PDFs are just scanned documents, and that's a problem. Contact us and we'll help you get we've got some software that can help with that, and now it's called Read Write. That can help us, that we have access to. And so we definitely can assist you if it's a scanned document, which means that when you go and you try to highlight the words, you should be able to to select and highlight words. And if you can't, if it looks like it's highlighting an image, like a big blob of text instead of one word at a time, then it's probably a scanned image. It's, some people do that. Like we're doing a lot of OER conversions right now, where a lot of people are converting their courses to open educational resources. And we have to be very careful, because some of those free resources are simply somebody just scanned a textbook page or scanned an old worksheet they had. And so those are not easily made accessible PDFs. But we do have some software that can assist us with that. But if it was, if you can highlight your words like this, then more than likely you can create, convert it to a Word, and see it will, depending how it was created and stuff, it may have some formatting, changes, and it may be uglier than we want it to be, but most of the time it may not be. It just depends how it was made to begin with. So if you have a PDF that you are really worried about, you contact us, okay? And we'll help you with it. Especially, like, I've worked with the paralegals people, and they had all their legal documents were all PDFs, and that can be very tricky. Sometimes there's an online version that's more accessible than the PDF itself. There's a web version that's more accessible. So let us know and we'll help.
Okay, sure will. Because this one looks like it's a PowerPoint.pdf, so I'm going to be calling.
Okay.
I didn't realize they were having a conversation.
Any other questions? I am going to stop sharing my screen right now. And if we don't have any other questions, then I guess we'll just pull up the thing and go over some of the resources that we have available to instructors. Jamie, if you want to do that, we can.
Let me get that.
All right. Okay, so we have the Vlc Accessibility Handbook, which is a, if you go to the virtual learning community that's housed through the North Carolina Community College System, there's a handbook that actually goes through how to make anything accessible. I mean, from PDFs to Excel documents to, you know, Word documents, etc. We also have the color contrast checker. Jamie, do you want to highlight that for us?
Yeah, so we mentioned color at the beginning, talked about some reds and greens, and this is a tool that will actually let you compare colors, put a background color and a foreground color, and then it'll tell you if a student with a disability with color blindness or something like that, if it's a high enough contrast for them to be able to actually view it successfully. And I'll drop that in the chat.
And we also have available to you, we have an instructional design webpage off of the Center of Academic Excellence, and there are resources there as well. And we'd also like to note that there is a instructional design request help form there. So if you ever need help from us, and whether it's course design, whether it's accessibility questions, whatever, we will certainly be glad to help you with that. And finally, if you are teaching a math-based course, we do have a software available to us, and some of the math teachers will have it available to them as well. It's called Equatio, and it is an awesome product. It allows you to create mathematical equations, type them out. You can type them out, you can write them, and it will turn it into an accessible file that's, you know, can be read by a screen reader. It's a wonderful tool, and if you want to learn more about that, we will be glad to help you with that. So if you have any kind of mathematical applications in the curriculum that you're teaching, and you will have to, you know, include equations or whatever in a PowerPoint, in a Word document, the equation editor in MS Office products is not accessible. So you have to have some other resource, and this actually just integrates right into your, it just lives on your desktop, and I've been using it all week to update some of my worksheets. It's been super easy to use. I mean, I could literally write these equations out by hand, and it will automatically turn them into a typed equation. It's super easy to edit if there's any problems with the translation. But it's really been a game changer for math accessibility. So if you do anything like that, you have any kind of math in your curriculum, and you have to display it and teach it to your students, this is the software that you want to have access to, Equatio. And I guess that wraps up my part of it. Jamie, would you like to say anything in closing?
Yeah, sure. So I want to give another opportunity if anybody has any questions about accessibility. If maybe you looked at your course while we were going through the presentation, and maybe you came across a couple of PDFs that you have, or some PowerPoints or things like that. I want to encourage you to reach out to us. Lisa and I will be glad to help you. Or if you just want us to look at your course in general for any accessibility problems, we'll be glad to do that and assist you with that. I posted some links to the contrast checker and to the instructional design page. So you might just want to click on those and bookmark them, save them for another time, and go through and look at those resources, because it can be helpful for you.
Jamie, if you're done, will you stop sharing?
Sure.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Lisa and Jamie. That wraps up our second day of orientation. We will get started tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but that session is only for certain people or brand new hires. So if you're supposed to be in that session, I have sent you the calendar invite for it. Otherwise, we will get started at 10 a.m. with formative assessments with Dr. Powell, and followed by rubrics and Blackboard with two of our other faculty members at the college. So if there are no other questions or requests of Lisa and Jamie, then that concludes our second day of orientation, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thanks.